You want to make a lot of money. You want to become rich in a short period of time because you know that time is money and you don't want to be wasting it? Well, real estate private equity is the way to go, baby. There's so many ways how to make a quick buck in the real estate industry because housing market is a honeypot with a lot of secrets. And baby, we know them all. Stay tuned. A lot of money. Become rich in the real estate industry, housing market. These sorts of introductions are typical for the YouTube videos of the financial genre. A way nicer guy than me, dressed in a white collared shirt, telling you the secrets of how you can make a lot of profit by entering the real estate private equity business. Well, this is stripping architecture, and fuck that. We're going to show how real estate private equity is actually a generator of gentrification. You're watching Stripping Architecture, and today we're going to strip down and dismantle the sneaky processes of real estate private equity. Let's see if the debate about gentrification should be focused on noodles and Oreo cookie latte, or there are some stronger capitalist patterns that endure in the background. Stay tuned.
Throughout this video, you will hear often this sound. This is the gentrification alarm. Whenever you hear this alarm, please pay close attention in order to discover the hidden forces of gentrification.
Before explaining how real estate private equity generates gentrification, we'll have to explain what is private equity without being boring and making sure that you will not change the channel. Hopefully, these guys over here are going to help us, even though the diversity is not well presented. But what can you do? We're living in strange times. Private equity is actually a partnership between, generally speaking, two partners that have interest into making investments and generating quick return on profits. Therefore, we'll take the freedom to say that in many occasions, private equity formations operate by hacking existing entities and turning their potential into profits. Let's try like this. There is an old house around the corner. Mustafa has a lot of expertise in house renovations, but he doesn't have much money to purchase the house. However, he has a good old friend called Sandra. Sandra knows nothing about renovations, but she has a deeper pocket and lots of rich friends. Sandra and Mustafa has something in common: trust and interest in profit. Sandra knows that Mustafa can do a great renovation, so she decides to help Mustafa financially. In that way, a partnership is being born between two people. Partner 1, Mustafa, and partner 2, Sandra. Mustafa gets the work done, he sells the house for profit, and part of the profits goes to Sandra. Both happy, move to another project. Probably this model is more than familiar to you, and it makes a lot of sense, right? Well, if you scale up this model, you will need more actors, additional funding, bigger network, and suddenly everything becomes far more complex than it used to be. Consequently, when everything starts to be more complex, there is a need for more contracts to be drafted and more transactions to be made. In that sense, more opportunities are being opened for more profits. And, as you can hear, we get entangled of the word more, and we forget about better or nicer, which means that when this kind of private equity partnership becomes larger, the final goal turns out to be profit and not a decent renovation. Now let's scale up the previous scenario and explain the major structure of private equity. Instead of renovation, let's talk about urban development. In that scenario, Mustafa and Sandra won't be individuals anymore, but organizations of people. Mustafa's organization will be known as the GP, or General Partner, while Sandra's organization will be known as LP, or Limited Partner. General Partner, or GP, and Limited Partner, or LP, is the major core structure of a private equity organization. And before we go forward, we want to remind you that if you want to strip down this kind of urban complex phenomena in an accessible way, with fun sketches and many interesting illustrations, this is the right book for it. This one you can find it on our website, and if you want the less authentic version, you can find it on Amazon. All the links are below in the description, and let's continue exploring the private equity. equity of real estate industry. Now that we have established that the private equities consisted out of general partner and limited partner, we can apply this structure to our previous story. General partner, or Mustafa, is an entity that knows a lot about real estate, property value, construction, and project management. This entity is the one in charge. It literally runs the whole operation. Limited partner, or Sandra, doesn't know much about the real estate dynamics, but she funds the project from a backstage. Therefore, limited partners predominantly act from position of investors and have limited control and responsibility over the new development. So the limited partner is the one who pours in the money, while the general partner is the one who runs the whole show. The general partner is charging a fee to the limited partner for running the whole business. And this can be simply explained in the following way. The limited partner buys a property for 1,000 euros. In this case, the general partner charges 1% fee. In other words, gets 10 euros in the pocket for running the operation. In this moment, the first gentrification alarm gets activated. If the general partner charges an acquisition fee on any investment the limited partner is making, for the general partner it makes a lot of sense to hustle for properties that can be acquired in a bulk. In other words, buying plenty of properties in one shot as package makes a lot of sense for real estate private equity partnerships. Now the question is, how beneficial is this for the local dynamics? This is why you often get to see how multiple properties are purchased at once by one entity, which reduces the opportunity for small-based individual investments, decent housing projects, or neighborhood initiatives. In addition to this, the general partner and the limited partner motivate each other to make larger profits by making additional deals. For example, the general partner may be granted bonuses in case manages to deliver higher profits than the promised ones. In that way, the general partner gains the ambitions to focus on cutting costs, standardizing the process, or investing only in assets that can return larger profits. Do you hear that? And this is where the second gentrification alarm is being turned on. While this story makes a lot of sense, this is why very often you get to see how different buildings are being developed in the same standardized way, or you get to see how the design development is particularly focused on developing and building elite materials or programs that can attract profile of higher income users. More so, the interest of private equity is to make quick exits of deals with as much as possible profit. This means that when you enter in the real estate private equity industry, your interest is to develop a project as soon as possible and then keep it in a speculation until the best market price comes. In that way, participation processes are not interesting at all for the private equity industry since they slow down this process. And here comes a third loud gentrification alarm. This is why very often we get to see fully equipped but empty office buildings, for example, where owners would even pay more taxes on the developed property until the moment for best exit price comes. These sort of processes do not have interest to consult the public opinion or local dynamics. It is literally forcing top-down projects and only following top market prices. And now comes the scariest part for all of you who genuinely care about the urban development of your city. The limited partner or the passive investors usually and most likely will get their fundings from third parties who are interested into getting involved in this development. Generally speaking, these parties are getting involved only with the purpose of making profits and not with the purpose of making better development of the city for everyone. What is even more interesting and horrifying is that these third-party investors can be also public money, which means pension funds, sovereign university funds, public saving funds, or maybe insurance funds. This means your money are being used for private developments. Yes, this is such a loud gentrification alarm that we cannot even explain how bad it is for our cities. Once the private equity is being funded by this sort of important social funds, the public domain indirectly gets involved in a private investment and becomes victim of the development. In this moment, in an informal way, the private equity partnership receives many approvals by the authorities with the major purpose of making financial growth. The private development becomes literally a hostage for success. Private equity partnerships often receive additional public funds and logistical leverage by the authorities as a boost for a successful story. In that way, the doors are open to the private equity to push their interests to a further extent, because in case they fail, many people who are holders of the public funds will lose their savings and there will be public disturbance and social tensions, which means no good for the government and for the market price, which ultimately means very bad situation for the investors. Authorities, market price, investors, what happens with the people? I mean, who gives an F for the people? I will just continue reading my Urban Revolution as a fun sketch. And finally, the fifth gentrification alarm is the loudest. Since the public domain becomes hostage to the private equity, the public domain turns out to be a conformist entity that will adapt to any kind of urban development as long as it generates profit. This means that the city becomes a ground for speculation and profit games. Games that we run into without being asked for and following the inertia of capitalism. The craziest thing is that some private entities can get so big that in order to maximize the profits, they are keen on buying out the competition just so they hold monopoly of the market and sell for the highest price. So honestly speaking, if you start analyzing the real estate private equity, you will actually find even more parts that are causing gentrification. But as always, let's try to wrap up this video with one of our reflection sketches. Instead of giving just a pure critique to this concept, the real estate private equity, we would like to also offer some obvious solution. And we will try to do that with the following illustration. As you can see on this illustration, we have imagined one big giant. This giant is very good in building cities. It has a lot of strength and a lot of knowledge. However, on top of this giant, you can see a bunch of people who are actually forcing and controlling this giant to do mess out of the city, and blinded by the finances is actually doing very bad job with the urban environment. Beneath this giant, you can see how people are trying to save their city from repetitive structures and to maintain their infrastructure in more humane way. Actually, they're trying to capture this giant and adopt it to work in their benefit. With this, we actually want to propose a very interesting idea. Obviously, in the private equity partnership, the general partner has a lot of knowledge into building cities. We're simply questioning why the state services, why public authorities, why we don't develop this kind of entity that will be actually working on the side of the people. With this illustration, we're talking about actually capturing this general partner. And look, as we said in the beginning, real estate private equity probably would occur, but the thing is that when it becomes big and becomes profit-based only, then there are many issues that are occurring. So it's definitely worth experimenting with this idea. If our public money anyhow are being taken and used for private investments, why we as a society don't develop systems where we're gonna have, under quotation, some kind of public private equity that the expertise will be used in order to serve the people. For example, generates profits, share the profits among the people, or part of the profits to go into maintenance of the people's houses within the new development, and in that way protecting gentrification. Worth thinking about this stuff. Thank you very much for staying tuned with us. Don't forget to get our beautiful book. I mean, you have to see how much knowledge and education and value and fun there is inside these books. And if you don't have better time to waste, go on the Patreon, try to support our work by ordering these illustrations, these postcards that on a monthly basis will come in your physical mailbox. So thank you very much, stay tuned, get the books, get the cards, love you very much, and see you in the next episode.